Okay, you guys, remember, whatever I share, it's for the information only. So this comes from the Scientology Money Project, a dedicated news site investigating Scientology money crime, lies, and legal matters, dated July 8th, 2025. 3,900 pages. By the way, 39 is very significant. Means they're on the FM channel. You know, the FM channel. 3,900 pages of victim impact statements filed by the victims of convicted felon, troll, and Scientologist David Gentile as his sentencing day approaches. An astonishing 3,900 pages of victim impact statements. Imagine that many statements, you guys. Have been filed with the court by the 15,000 victims. 15,000 victims, troll. Of convicted felon and Scientologist David Gentile. This, as sentencing day approaches for him and his criminal associate, Jeffrey Schneider. As these two criminals do with all things, they are incinerating investor money to send the court yet another letter of reproach. In this case, Gentile, who is joined by Schneider in the letter, attacks both the government and their victims, as we read in an excerpt of the letter below. The letter is dated of March 25, 2025. It's to utter them ruinly. Or wait, I'm saying it backwards. To ruin them utterly. It's radiation's affecting me. Okay, there is the law firm regarding United States versus Gentile et al. Dear Judge Kenver, we represent defendant David Gentile and write in response to the court's March 20th, 2025 order to object to the court's consideration of the 3,900 pages of impact statements and affidavits of purported victims that have been submitted by the government to date. Defendant Jeffrey Schneider joins in this letter and the request for relief. Too bad all the children's victims' statements didn't mean anything. The government expressly asked this court to give Mr. Gentile a sentence comparable to that of a defendant convicted of premeditated murder because of the undeniably sad and at times tragic stories buried within these 3,900 pages. Governor Sent's memo, ECF number 539 at 1116. But not everyone has the right to address the court and have their story considered in deciding Mr. Gentile's sentence. Section 18 U.S.C. 3771 C as in Charlie 2 Alpha, granting that right only to qualified crime victims. I'm not going to read the whole thing here. Okay, I'll just read the last paragraph because there was a lot there. The government simply dumped these statements, listen to this, on the defendants and the court without even the most basic attempt to determine whether the statements are appropriate for the court to consider. Narcissism, anyone? As a result, the situation creates an unfairly prejudicial situation. Okay, scroll down to the bottom of this article to read the letter in its entirety. The argument presented by Gentile in this letter offers the reader a direct look into the psyche of an entitled Scientology, weaponized, venomous sociopath who cares only for himself. What is that policy? Ruin them utterly? That Gentile has the unmitigated gall to attack his victims in a post-conviction letter to the court shows him, that's no remorse as well, to be operating under Hubbard's doctrine that the victims of the 1.8 billion, what a great number that is, 1.8 billion GPB Capital Holdings, Con pulled it in, and therefore deserve their financial ruin and are not real victims. Kind of like how the children in Scientology get physically abused, neglected, and sometimes SA'd, and they pulled it in. Kind of like that. Gentile has shown absolutely no remorse. Yeah, I caught that. Like any narcissist, like any sociopath, and like 100% psychopaths have nothing there. We argue that the court should disregard the government's recommendation of 15 years and sentence David Gentile to the full 85 years, 1,020 months, per the U.S. sentencing guidelines. And then they show the USC codes, or the USSG guidelines. David Gentile argues that he should not be imprisoned for all of the unrelated tragedies that happened to GPB capital investors. But this is absurd. For once, Gentile ruined people financially. Then tragedies which otherwise would not have happened did, in fact, happen. For example, people who lost their life savings would have not had the money for proper health care, dental care, housing, diet, and the psychological treatment caused by the devastation of losing everything to a pair of criminals. These tragedies and their suffering are not separable from being the victim of a crime. There is a cascade of tragedies which flow from financial devastation and ruin, and yet David Gentile absurdly asks and expects the court to assess these tragedies into those related and unrelated to his criminal actions. Gentile's craven and entitled criminal conduct merits the full 85 years in prison, for he is truly a monster. David Gentile complains about the government asking for him to be imprisoned for a term as long as that of a person who committed a premeditated murk. Perhaps he is thinking here of his fellow Scientologist and OT8 William Rex Fowler, who was sentenced to life in Colorado for murdering his business partner. Below are 139 pages of excerpts of the 3,900 pages of victim impact statements. The names of the victims have been redacted. These letters brutally document the suffering David Gentile and Jeffrey Schneider inflicted on their victims. Too bad the Scientology children never get their victim statements read. You know, the ones in there right now? Yeah. We truly hope the judge gives these criminals 85 years in prison due to the enormity of their deliberate and intense harm they inflicted on their 15,000 victims. In our view, David Gentile and Jeffrey Schneider deserve the same punishment as murderers because they financially cayed so many of their victims, many of whom were retirees who invested their life savings and lost everything. Takes a special kind of scum. One of their victims is now 77 years old. As she writes, she has had to get by on $700 a month since 2018 when distribution stopped. Trying to see what this is. What's this gentleman's name that writes this? He's very thorough. Dear Judge Kovner, the government writes in response to the court's March 17, 2025 minute order directing the government to file publicly redacted versions of 2 logs of victim impact statements and affidavits of loss previously submitted under seal by the government. Isn't that funny how it was sealed, you guys? CECF docket number 550. The redacted logs are attached as Exhibit A and Exhibit B to this letter. In accordance with the court's order, the government has redacted personal identifying information, including names, addresses, and dates of birth. Anyways, I'm not going to read that entire letter. Gentile's letter to the court via his attorney. I already had enough of him in that first letter. But anyways, I will leave a link in the description box. Like and subscribe if you choose. Otherwise, have an amazing day or night, wherever you are. Peace.